All right, so we will take the last of these slides from CSS. Okay, so let's play a game of find some differences. Can you find the difference between that image and that image?
This one has some space between the border around.
Yeah.
This gray box.
Yeah.
Around heading our blocks elements.
Yeah.
And the others.
Yeah.
But this one is just.
It goes all the way.
All the way.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So this is an example of without resets, and this is with resets. So if you but this is just that reset. Okay, that's not what we mean. So when I mean reset, at least, I mean this one that's called reset CSS. It's something pretty standard. It's not something you need to memorize at all. It's just something that you just add to your project. So for example, if I have a Visual Studio project here, and then let's try to work in Visual Studio as much as we can today. So we practice that. So I'll just create a folder for an exercise. So we'll take week 3, exercise, then open that folder. So I have that folder open here now. I don't have any files yet, but because I opened the folder in Visual Studio, I have the possibility to add folders and files up there. I don't know if you can see it, Mohammed. I'll just... Yeah. So this will add more files, new file. That will add new folders. So I'll just add the file called, what's like a standard name for my main HTML file. Index. Yeah, index.html. And I will cheat again, and I will use Emmet to create the all these different tags that we normally have. Okay, and then I will create a new file for just my resets. So I will just call it reset CSS, and then copy paste everything from in there, even this part. So I know where it comes from. My prettifier will prettify this document, but it doesn't matter. So just if we look at it quickly, what it basically does is it has all of these different HTML selectors and says it should have margin 0, padding 0, border none, font size 100%, all of that, right? So it basically resets everything that normally comes from your browser. So for example, if we look at this UL, then that's whatever we have written. If we get rid of all that, that doesn't matter right now. All of this we don't need. So everything that says user agent style sheet, right? That's something that comes from Chrome, my browser. If I open it in another browser, like Firefox, that's where it is. And I inspect it. Firefox has an inspector as well. I just don't use it that much, but I can try to inspect this list here. So that's a list. No, it doesn't show it. I don't know how to get it to show it, unfortunately, but it has the styles anyway. You can see it has some padding on the left. Maybe? No. Yeah, I'm not completely sure. But it doesn't matter. It has the same styles, default browser styles. So what reset does, it selects pretty much everything and will apply these styles. And then it will select all of these other ones that should be display block but might not be in some weird browsers and adds them to display block. and then the body to be line height 1, which will make, do you know what line height 1 means?
The difference between lines.
Yeah. So what does it mean that it's unitless? It means that if it's 1, it basically stands for 100% compared to your font size. So for example, if I just create a quick code pen, so if I say my H1 hello world, and then I'll just write some lorem text in here to make it long. So, and then I inspect it. So if I say the line, I'll say font size should be 50 pixels, right? And then if I say the line height should be 1, and then I look at these computed styles and find the line height, you see it's also 40 pixels, like the font size. So if I say the line height should be 2, what do you think it will mean?
80 pixels.
80 pixels.
Yeah. So what if I say, okay, now it's 80, you can see it's much bigger. So if I say 1.5, let's test your math skills. What will that be?
60.
Yeah. And let's make it super difficult now. What if I set this to 20? What will the line height be? Yeah. Exactly. And that's the really, really cool thing about using line height without a measurement unit. You could say this should be pixel. That would obviously not make sense for if you say 1.5. But you could also say, so you could say line height, for example, 30 pixels. So that would mean exactly the same in this case, right? So if I disable line height 30, it looks the same as if I not disable it. But why should I rather use 1.5 instead of 30 pixel? You know? Does anybody know?
Because if you change the size,
Yeah?
it will be more.
Yeah, exactly. So this is because of responsive development, because we will probably have another font size for our H1 on mobile than on desktop. And then if we say font line height 30, then we need to re-specify it on another size, like a screen size. If we just write 1.5, then it will calculate it automatically compared to the font size. So that's a very, very, very good tip. I learned it actually later on, but I wish I knew it from the beginning. So list style none. Do you know what that does on ULs and OLs?
Organize list.
Yeah. What's list style?
Doesn't use any.
It removes it's
The both list kind.
Yeah, but removes what?
This is the dots and the
Yeah.
shapes makes the
Yeah,
items.
it removes the bullets or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. The like the style, the list decorator, right? Yeah, block quotes, it will just remove the quotes. I don't know why that's good, but yeah. And table, this I guess is something that I don't use tables that much, to be honest, but I guess this is something that is not the same in browsers, so it's to make it the same. Anyway, so let's see. Let's see if we say we make it super simple. We say we have a header. In there we have a nav. In there we have a UL. In there we have an li, and in there we have an anchor which says link 1. And then I'm going to copy and paste this a couple of times. Perfect. And now I'm going to open this page in Chrome. Okay, and notice that I don't have any links here, right? I'm not linking to any files yet. So let's say, okay, I will create I will call it main.css. I will create a file which will be my custom styling, right? So let's say that I want to see I want to visualize the padding of the margin, or sorry, the padding of the list a bit better. So I would just say I want my header to be of background azure. I think that's a color that's kind of like a light blue, so we can still see the text. And then how do I link to my CSS file? Can someone help?
Link.
Yeah. Yeah. Should I just press enter?
Yeah. No.
Okay. So what do I need then?
The name of the CSS file.
Yeah.
Name is-
REL
Style sheet.
style sheet.
And href.
Href.
This is not
Yeah. I'm just actually, if I say control space on my keyboard,
Yes.
it will show my file, so I don't need to type anything myself. So I just do this, and then I close the link. It's a self-closing tag, so I don't need to create another one to close it, right? I don't need to do that. Actually, I shouldn't do that. Just close it in at the end. Cool. So we have that. Let's see if it works. It does work. Oh, you can see it. Okay, I'll use another color so you can see it. I just use red. It worked perfect before. Great. So I do this so you can see a bit better. So now you see that what's over there.
It's better.
Yeah, it's not going all the way. And also it has all of these irritating bullet points. So let's see what happens if I add the reset. If I also link to the reset file. Should we just copy paste this? So you will always want to link to your reset file first before your own custom CSS file. Why is that?
Because it means you need to reset first, then
Yeah.
add link it to our CSS file to show that all our settings in the CSS and properties in like blank.
Yeah.
Making the blank sheet.
Right, but what would happen if I did it the other way around? What could I risk?
You could reset all your CSS style.
Yeah, exactly. So order matters in CSS, right? So if I use the exact same selector, and for example, if I say, let's find one here. If I say body should have a padding of 40 pixel, right? So if I say padding 40, okay, what am I doing? If I say, we select the body and we say padding of 40 pixels, then it's the exact same specificity as this one, right? Because I'm just targeting the body and saying what the padding should be. So if I load in the reset after the main, then it will override my own styling. So right now, you see that with the two things happened, right? Or actually three. So what happened to the list? It's going all the way out into the header. Let's try and inspect it. So the body has gotten 40 pixels padding. That comes from here, right? And if we inspect the list, you see that this one, reset CSS, that's giving it all this margin, padding, blah blah, 0. So it doesn't have the bullet points anymore, and it goes all the way out into the header. So that's really nice, because we don't need to do it on ourselves, and we don't, like if you, for example, if you select something with a class, like if you have multiple ULs and you select them with their class instead of just the HTML element, then you would have to do it multiple times. Now you're done. Don't need to do anything. So let's try to illustrate. If I say my main, if I link to it before the reset, then what do you think will happen? So we specified this on the body, right? Oh, look, so
It's
this,
override on
yeah, exactly. So this is coming from the main CSS. I say the body should have 40 pixels, but in the reset CSS, it says the
not
body
zero.
should have 0 margin, right? So now it doesn't have any margin. Great. Now we illustrated why the reset should always be loaded in before our own CSS file.
But then if you have, like, for example, many lists in your website,
Yeah.
and some of them you need to have some points,
Yeah.
you also remove it.
Yeah, that's true. And that's a very good argument. That's why some developers don't actually use reset CSS. They use something else that is called normalize CSS, which we can download. So this is what it is. I can also create a normalize CSS file. So if we look at the difference, this is much longer. That's one difference. But also, if we look, you see, so if we look at, okay, I'll try to search for margin 0, right? It's specified on the body. It's specified, oh, not even on the H1. And it's specified on these: button, input, opt group, select, and text area. On nothing else. So it's not setting the margin to 0 on other stuff. Also, bullet points. So in our reset CSS, it was setting the list style to none, right? Should we try to see if that is happening in normalize? Nope. So, okay, what's the difference between reset and normalize? You could also, that's something you can Google as well. There are some articles about it, but I will just...
Normalize, like, make everything to default.
Almost. We just open our file now. Oh, sure. So you see that now, I'll just remove the padding from the body. Don't need it. Okay, so you see that now my UL has, no, it does, wait, no, it actually, okay, yes, it does have some padding again, and the list items also have the disk style type. So normalize doesn't help with that, although it does help with all of these default styles looking the same in every browser. So you won't have cross-browser issues. That's something that front-end developers struggle a lot with, is that things don't look exactly the same on different browsers. Especially Internet Explorer can trip you up. What I normally do is I have a big folder with all my CSS files, right? And then actually I can show you WebStorm, the project that I'm currently working on, right? So this will be top secret actual code that's...
But you are putting in YouTube.
Yeah. We'll not say which project it is.
Okay.
We want it to be... Okay, so we'll say this is kind of complex, but so what I do is I have my generic styles, and then I have my element styles. So actually, okay, I do have the reset. I actually didn't think I did, but I have normalized CSS, and then I would have all of these element styles. So I would have some, for example, list styles. This selector, this will make all my lists which have a class name or a class to have no list style, which means that so this UL, for example, okay, let's try to add that to our code. So say this is an attribute selector. I'm not sure if you can remember it. Isn't that how it's written? Yeah. So list style none. Let's see if that makes a difference for us. Nope. Okay. Let's see if we can make a difference for us. Can you help me how we would do that? So I'm saying all my lists that have a class should not have a disk.
You can add some class for the list items.
For the list items?
Yeah. One of them or two.
Okay.
So you can see the difference.
So we say list item. Nope, no difference.
Shouldn't
The UL should have a
UL?
class.
The UL.
Because the UL must is like a parent.
So we say, okay, the UL should have a class of list. Ooh, that worked. So now it's being selected and it says that, so this list should not have a style, and that will target the children in that way. But the list item does actually not need to have a class. So why is this smart? Well, in my mind at least, it is smart because whenever I create a list that has a class, it will probably be a list with some things where I don't want the bullet points. But I might have a maybe an article on my page, right, where I have a heading and in there I have some paragraphs, whatever, and then I also might have a list where I'm actually writing some things that I want. So if I have a list of actual, some actual text, right? If I have some actual text on my website, then I might want that list to have the bullet points. Mm-hmm. So can you see the difference? I have two ULs on this page. I have the one in the header, the one with the class, and I call this rich text. So this is text that you write for the users to read, right? So those lists you want to have the style, like the disk tag, but the lists that you will use to create a navigation with, or a list of icons or whatever, those you normally don't want to have the disk. Do you kind of get the difference? Do you understand the difference between reset CSS and normalize CSS? So reset removes all the styling that is generated by the browser. Normalize CSS will regulate it, so it looks the same in all browsers, but it doesn't remove it. Okay?
Looks the same based on what I work on or what I do, right?
It looks the same on every browser. It will look the same in Internet Explorer and Chrome.
Yeah,
Firefox.
but according to what I do. Or
with normalized CSS.
yeah.
So if you use normalized CSS, then you will still have to, in your own styling, you will still need to, like what I would do is I would create a file called list CSS. And then in there I would select my list with the HTML selector, and I would do some very, very generic, very unopinionated styling where I want to target all of my lists, right? So in here I could say that. Because this is true for all my lists with a class. I don't want them to have a list style.
Okay.
Yeah? And then you could use normalize, which will make things look the same in each browser, but doesn't reset them. It doesn't remove all margin and padding and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's your choice. It's not something. This is it's not a situation where there is a right and a wrong answer. It's
No.
a lot of web development is opinion and preference based. So it depends on you what you prefer. I prefer reset CSS because I'm very passionate about CSS, so I like doing it my way, right? But for developers who are not that passionate about CSS, they might want to get all of these free things from the browser, right? So you have the same margin, the same padding, whatever in each browser, perfect. It's up to you. You will find out what your preferences are as you get some more experience. Great. So that was the first slide. Wow. Now we only have like 35 to go. So another very important but sort of conceptual thing is the box model. We have kind of discussed this already, and fortunately you don't need to like memorize everything because DevTools is very, very good at letting you inspect things. So the reason why there is no calculated tab here, or so it's called computed tab here, is because if your DevTools is wide enough, then it will just put it on the right side. If it's not wide enough, then it will be its own tab. So this is the box model basically, right? We have talked about the blue one is the what? The content, yeah. The green one is the padding. Then if you have some border, we can try that. So if we add some border to our UL, then it will also have some border. That's the purple one, apparently. And then there's margin. So can someone tell me what the difference between margin and padding is?
Margin can involve the whole block can move it.
Yeah.
And the padding is just remove the content from the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
From, if we consider margin as a line, I think
Yeah.
the padding is the space between this line margin and content
Mm-hmm.
that can be filled with the border also.
Yeah.
Between margin and padding.
Yeah.
But the margin is like the space makes the box, hold the block with the other block.
Okay.
The difference in the space.
Right.
Between the.
Okay. That's sort of correct, but not completely, because if I say I want this list, right? Look, there is this UL. If I say I want it to have padding top 100 pixels, then it will also kind of be the spacing between two block items, right? But so I think a very good way to try to imagine what all of these stand for is if you try to like imagine your house, right? So the walls on your house, around your house, is the border, and then the padding is the space from the wall inside to the space to your furniture, exactly. And then the margin is whatever you have around the space you have around the walls of your house.
Like your yard.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, if I say that I want this UL to have a background color, that's I think the best way to illustrate the difference between padding and margin. So if I say that I want my list to have a background of yellow, you see that my list has some margin, right? the one that looks green right now, that looks green because I'm using a yellow background, but it is actually blue. That's the content. Yeah. Sorry to confuse you. And so, and whatever is, it looks like a green banana. That's actually the padding over there. So if I say, let's try to reset this a bit, right? So we say we don't want any margin, we don't want any padding. So it will apply the background to my content. If I say I add some padding to my list, do you think that padding will be, the area of the padding, will that have a background color or not?
Yes.
It will have?
Yeah.
So let's say if we say, padding 20. Yeah, it does have the background color. Okay, cool. What happens if I say it should have a margin?
No.
It will not. So it's a margin 20. Nope, it doesn't have the background because that's my yard, right? That's not. I'm not gonna put some floor on my yard, or some people do it, but that's not part of my house anyway. So yeah, and then if I say, okay, I want to show on my website where the,
I have question.
yeah,
Can you see that how it's go out
yeah,
the font?
yeah.
Something is having all the time. Something.
Yeah, that's because of this browser style. So if we just let's try to add the reset back, because that's gonna be less confusing for you guys. Cool. And then we say we have our list, and we add the, whoa, I'm shouting now, the background back. So if we say it has a margin of 20, then you see now it's gone. Now it's not there anymore. It's because the bullet points, they are applied with some padding left, but inside on your UL, but they are on the list item. So that's a bit confusing. But you will not struggle with that most of the time anyway, because you will just remove the bullet points, so you don't need to think about it. Okay, so now let's say that we want to show the world where how big the how thick the walls of the house is, right? Then we can say we want the what will be the property? What was the
border?
yeah? So let's just give it a really big border. So then you see that the border will be applied just before the margin, which is the yard. And then we also apply some padding. Well, will that sit? Well, where will be the padding? Yeah. So if we say, oh yes, then the content will move in a bit and down and up. So the content is, let's just try to inspect it. So the content is that area, the padding is that area. So the content is my furniture, the padding is the space to the wall, the border is the wall.
So the padding is just the space between the border and the content?
Yeah, but you don't have border all the time. But if you do have, then
yes.
yeah. Yes, exactly.
But it's just because a few minutes ago you just tried to apply something, and then it, like when you increase the padding, it took the color with it.
It took the what?
The color. So it didn't only apply within the content,
Yeah.
but it went further. So it increased the area, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it will.
Like this.
Yes, and
But
that's
no, without the border.
without the border.
Yeah.
Well, then it was because there was no border,
Yeah.
probably. But the border will always be outside of the padding, right outside of the padding. If you have any padding. If you don't have any padding, then it will be right outside of your content, right?
Yeah, but is it a good practice to just always add the border, even if it's transparent, just to
No.
limit myself?
No.
No.
It's try to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
So don't do anything you don't need.
Yeah.
Unless you, for example, there is an exception that I can think of is if you have a state of your component. So for example, if you have a button that should have a border when you hover on it, right?
Right.
If you don't want it to jump, then you would add a border that is transparent on the default state, and then just change the color of the border on hover state.
Okay.
But we can play around with that when we talk about transition later on today.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is that relevant at all?
No worries.
But can you see when you define the background color,
Yeah.
it's just a horizontal.
The background color.
Yes, like the red one.
Yeah.
And the top.
Yeah.
But what if you want to make it like a vertical? Is that possible?
Well, it fills in your content and your padding area.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes both vertical and horizontally.
Okay, so by adjusting the padding
And the height.
heights.
So for example, if you want, you don't always need to use padding. You can also so if you want to adjust the area of that one, you don't need to adjust the padding or the margin all the time. You can also just say that you want the height to be, for example, 500 pixels, right?
Okay.
Then it will be that area that gets increased.
Okay.
So your area of your furniture, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And then they will still have padding around, even though you specify how big the height should be, and you don't even need to say it height, because then it's fixed. So if you have content that's more than 500 pixels, then it will hide some of it, or it will go out of your content area. So if you say minimum height, then it will be at least 500 pixels, but if you have more content, then it will grow
Yes.
bigger, right?
Okay.
So minimum width and height is pretty smart that way.
But it doesn't shrink. Like it can be
No, it
expanded,
doesn't
but
shrink.
It doesn't shrink.
Yeah, you can also do it the other way around, which is max height, which will take the auto height, but if you have more content, then it will grow. But even if you have crazy much content, the actual area that you see will not be bigger than 500 pixels, and then the content will just go out of it. So the text or whatever is too big, it will go out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the difference in that. So if you want to manipulate the size of your background, then you will probably do it with width and height,
Okay.
and sometimes padding.
Mhm.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions about this? No? Okay, then I think we should take a short coffee break.